everybody. Oh my gosh, I am so completely excited. I have a very, very special guest here today, Dr. Alan Desmond, fresh from, are you in Ireland?
I'm from Ireland, Sophie, but I live in the southwest of England.
Oh, you do live in the southwest of England. Whereabouts in the southwest of England?
Not far from Exeter, near Torquay. I'm in a little town called Shalden, right on the coast, right on the beach. I just took a little walk on the beach before this, just to clear the head.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite areas. I actually come from more like southeast England, but it's so beautiful down there.
Oh,
so
gorgeous.
Anyway, for those of you who are watching, I am so honored to have you here, Dr. Desmond. I have heard you speak at medical conferences. I'm a bit of a nerd like that. As a nutritionist, I'm always like looking for the latest, best research, cutting edge science, and you're always there. You are teaching doctors. And I'm like, okay, so that's how I first found you. And then I started to dig in a little bit more. I followed you on Instagram. And then I was so excited that you came out with a book. And this book is the most beautiful, beautiful book. I mean, I was just saying to you before that the food, we'll get into the book. The food photography is just stunning. It's a cookbook, but what we are going to be talking about today, everybody, we're going to be talking about really how to heal your gut and gut health and digestive health with no better a doctor to talk to about this than Dr. Alan Desmond. I'm just going to take off this annoying sort of ticker tape along the bottom so we can just sort of relax a little bit here. So thank you for watching, everybody. We're going to get into some great conversation today. Feel free to ask questions, and I will try to take some of your questions. I must say that I think one of the things that I heard you say, I think it was on a podcast or I heard it on something, and you talk about this in your book, Dr. Desmond, is as a doctor in, I believe, Ireland is where you did. In Ireland, is that where you did your training?
Yes, indeed. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I remember hearing that story about a Crohn's patient, which I'd love you to just very briefly touch on that, and how at the time, the advice that was being given with what should I eat was a little bit of a shocker to you. And it really came home to me because my family are in the UK. And I remember when my father had a very big digestive surgery for a kind of hiatus hernia and various other things. Remember when he came out, he said to the surgeon, "What should I eat?" And the surgeon said, "Good God, anything you want to." And I was like, oh, as a nutritionist. So over to you. What sparked Dr. Desmond is a gastroenterologist. Let's hear a little bit about your story and you.
Well, Sophie, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you for such a fantastic intro. And it's so cool to see my little book in your hands all the way over there on the West Coast. So absolutely beautiful. So thank you, and lovely to spend time with you and your awesome audience this evening. So as a gastroenterologist, I'm a medical doctor who specializes in treating people with severe digestive problems. So if you wanted to find me on an average working day, you would find me in the hospital. I would be on the ward, doing a ward round, seeing patients, making a plan for the next 24 hours. I might be in the endoscopy unit doing a colonoscopy or a endoscopic procedure on a patient, or I'll be in my outpatient clinic having one-on-one encounters with patients and trying to get their digestive health sorted out, reach a diagnosis, reach a treatment plan, etc. So this journey towards becoming a doctor who specializes in gut health started a long time ago. It takes a long time to become a doctor, as I say in the book. So I went to med school in 1995, graduated 2001. And in about 2002, 2003, I was in that period of being a recently qualified doctor. This is the thing you see on TV and medical dramas and like ER and all these programs. over the years, I was in that situation where I was doing like 100 hours a week at the hospital. I'm working 36-hour shifts without a break. You're assisting at a resus case. You're breaking bad news to someone about a cancer diagnosis. You're, then at 3 a.m. you're trying to find some food before you get back onto the ward. That sort of difficult crucible that we used to view as the best way to train a young doctor. But around that time, I had my first rotation in gastroenterology. And at that point in my career, I was trying to decide what specialty I would work in. And you rotate, you do, orthopedics, urology, surgery, nephrology, then you do gastroenterology, endocrine, you go through all the different specialties. So I'm doing my gastroenterology rotation. And so I'm in my early 20s. Most people in the hospital as patients are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and more. Okay. So as a young doctor, you feel, okay, so most of our patients are older folks, which is what you'd expect. Okay. They're later in life, which is what you'd expect. But within gastroenterology, I met this new group of patients. These were young people, Sophie. These were people in their late teens and 20s and 30s. These were people who were in university, who were newly married or had young children or were starting a business. And mostly externally, they looked really well and they didn't have a long list of health problems. But here they were in hospital with severe digestive problems. And these people were suffering from a group of conditions called inflammatory bowel diseases, Crohn's disease, or ulcerative colitis. So these are patients who have sections of their bowel or their large bowel that are terribly inflamed, dysfunctional, causing pain, malabsorption, weight loss, terrible diarrhea, constant need for the bathroom, dehydration, and they're so unwell that they're in hospital. Many of them require surgery to remove parts of their gut that have become irreversibly diseased. Many of them end up on very powerful immune suppressing medications. So this was a new group, a new type of patient for me, right? And I remember we had one young man, I can even remember which bed he was in on which ward. And this was a young guy, early 20s, who was hospitalized with Crohn's disease. And he'd been on treatment for 3 days. He'd been given strong intravenous steroids to reduce the inflammation in his gut. And we were planning to start him on another immune suppressing medication. And as the junior doctor, I was there with the rest of the team. And it's my job to present all the results so the boss can make the decision about the next step in management. And my boss, the senior doctor, says, look, things are going well. The steroids are working. We're going to put you on another immune suppressor tomorrow. You're not going to need the surgery. Things are going well. And this young man's appetite was coming back. And he asked my boss, and he asked us as his doctors and health professionals, is there any, he said, I think the exact quote was, what about food? Is there anything that I should eat or anything that I shouldn't eat? And his mum was there to support him, and she looked at us in askance. And the answer he was given by my boss was, it doesn't matter. Calories are calories, and right now you need a lot of calories for healing. And then my boss turned to his mum and said, does he like McDonald's? Why don't you bring him in some McDonald's? Because it's really got a lot of calories. And the young man was surprised, but then I think initially kind of pleased that his mom was going to go and get him a McDonald's on doctor's orders.
Yeah.
And then his mom looked surprised. I didn't really know any better, Sophie. I thought, okay, it doesn't sound, okay, maybe this guy's my boss. This must be true. But it was a surprising answer, and it reflected the thinking at the time. Calories are just calories regardless of source. Your body needs calories now. As I progressed in my training and I decided that I wanted to be a gastroenterologist, it became perfectly clear to me that every single patient with a digestive health problem, almost to a fault, will ask their doctor and their medical team, what about food, doctor? Is there anything that I should eat or I shouldn't eat? And when they're asking that question, they're not just asking about what foods will make me feel better today. what foods will make me feel better tomorrow. They're talking about what foods are going to improve my gut health long term, improve my prognosis. So I will need fewer medications. So I might not need that surgery that you've told me there's a reasonable chance that I will need. And not only that, Sophie, they're also asking what foods should I be eating or not eating for my gut health, but also my overall health, because I want to get well.
Wow.
And that's how I ended up being a doctor who recommends that people unprocess the food on their plate and choose plants first and move towards a whole food, plant-based diet. Because when you look at the science, this approach to food is perfectly designed for excellent gut health, excellent gut microbial health, and excellent overall health. And that's how I've ended up speaking at medical conferences, educating and teaching doctors. It's been my privilege to teach medical students, which is incredible, to get them when they're still in medical school, so they hear about this stuff early, but also to give, public lectures to members of the public. And I think it almost inevitably, because I love food and I'm a big foodie, led to the book.
Wow. I mean, first of all, I just want to thank you so much for your work, your passion, your mission, because you're so generous with your time and being a doctor, and being that I've heard you on so many different things, I know that you're incredibly generous with your time and spreading this vitally important message that has really been missing. And so many, there's just one lady here who says, yeah, been there. Doc said eat anything, going through BC. So yeah, a lot of people have, I think that's the common experience. And I hear it all the time. As a nutritionist, the women I work with, regardless of what they're going through, whether it's an endocrinologist, whether it's their gastroenterologist, whether it's a nephrologist, it's the same old thing. It's just there does not seem to be the computing of the fact that there is something that is medicine that can actually heal us. So would you, as a gastroenterologist, because I say this all the time and I am not clearly a doctor or a gastroenterologist, but is it absolutely true that our gut is the foundation of our good health?
I think there's a lot of truth in that concept, okay? And that shouldn't surprise anyone. Hippocrates of Cos, 2,500 years ago, was teaching his disciples, his followers, the foundations of what we now recognize as modern medicine. He told his disciples that all disease begins in the gut. And what we now know 2.5 centuries later is that there was a lot of truth in that ancient wisdom. The food that we put in the gut is the #1 determinant of human health and longevity right now in high-income countries like the US and the UK. It is the #1 driver of both good health and poor health and chronic disease, depending on what sorts of foods you choose to consume 3 times a day when you have a meal. And not only that, of course, Sophie, the food that we consume each day decides whether our body, our gut, and our gut microbes thrive, our human gut microbiome thrives, and whether it helps us to optimize our health or does the exact opposite. So yes, I believe there's a lot of truth in the concept that health begins in the gut. And sadly, if all health begins in the gut, then countries like the US and the UK are in big trouble right now. Because thanks to the standard Western diet, the standard American diet, which is a high meat, high dairy, high processed food, high junk food, low plant, low whole grain, low legume, low plant diversity way to eat, gut health is terrible in general. People have terrible gut health. 1 in 3 people, 1 in 3 adults under 50 in the US right now have diverticular disease. It costs the US healthcare system $2.5 billion a year. Colorectal cancer affects about 1 in 20 US adults in their lifetime. In the US right now, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is predominantly driven by diet and lifestyle, is set to become the most common cause of cirrhosis,
Wow.
We used to think of cirrhosis as being something that, alcoholics
Yeah.
got, or,
Yeah.
a lot of famous movie stars ended up with cirrhosis
Yeah.
because of their rock star lifestyle. But non-alcoholic fatty liver disease affects between 80 and 100 million Americans right now, of about whom about a quarter will get inflammation in their liver, and many of whom will ultimately be candidates for a liver transplant. And it's going to overtake alcohol as the number one reason for having that. And then I guess when we look at less severe but incredibly intrusive symptoms, if we talk about irritable bowel syndrome, bloating, abdominal pain, constipation, acid reflux, etc., these are conditions that affect up to 20% of US adults. And the reason, one of the main drivers here, is that the standard American diet is almost perfectly constructed to devastate your gut health. But on the flip side, good news, a whole food plant-based diet, a diet that is based around fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, and healthy whole plants, ticks all the right boxes for excellent gut health. And not only does it provide significant protection against ever developing conditions like IBS, Crohn's, colitis, colorectal cancer, NASH, cirrhosis, etc. Even if you've been diagnosed with one of these conditions, a healthier approach to food has something to offer. And in many cases, it is just as important as all the fancy and expensive medications that we prescribe at clinic.
Wow. So those of you who are just hopped on or hopped on a little bit late, and you're just engaged with us, I'm talking to Dr. Alan Desmond, who is currently in the UK. He resides in the UK. He's a gastroenterologist. He is absolutely brilliant, a thought leader, a speaker to the medical community about gut health and nutrition as it relates to gastroenterology. Now, his new book that everybody needs to go out and buy a copy of right this second. And I was saying to Dr. Desmond that I actually recommend this to my clients that I coach. It is called The Plant-Based Diet Revolution, 28 Days to a Happier Gut and a Healthier You, and with 80 simple vegan recipes. And I just want to tell you that this book, I was so excited to get my hands on a copy of this book. It's just come out in the US, by the way. It's only been out for about 1 month. And one of the many things that I love about this book, and I have a ton of plant-based cookery books, but this one stands head and shoulders above the rest because the photographs are so beautiful. Unusually, there is a beautiful, beautiful photograph for almost every single recipe. And the recipes are gorgeous and delicious and hearty and mouth-watering. Winter pilaf, goat goulash hot pot, autumn roasting tray tempeh. There's things for summer when you want beautiful, refreshing squash and lemongrass noodle broth. Wild rice super salad, squash and raw spicy tofu rolls. I mean, if any of you are on the fence about being plant-based and you think, oh, it might be a little bit difficult or boring, I am telling you, treat yourself, gift yourself to a copy of this book, because it's one that you'll absolutely want to look at over and over again and just salivate over the pictures. Actually, this is one that I love, baked kedgeree, because I was raised in England on kedgeree, that had all that kind of fish and butter and stuff in it. But baked kedgeree with roast tomatoes, mushrooms, and spinach. And ladies, and any gents if you're watching, look at that beautiful, beautiful photograph. I mean, look at it. How could you not? So everybody get a copy of the book because it's going to inspire you. There's also at the beginning, I mean, it's so clever, this book, because at the beginning, there's a lot of information, key nutrients on a healthy plant-based diet with a list of nutrients. Then there's all sorts of wonderful information. I love your section on plant-based or Mediterranean, because, you know, that's always been the thing for years. But
Absolutely, it's so important.
Sounds sexy to do, oh, the Mediterranean. But, you know, Dr. Desmond, I'm a weight management specialist, so I look at all the meta-analysis comparing Mediterranean to a, you know, oil-free, whole food plant-based diet. And of course, the Mediterranean doesn't even stand up in that for weight loss, certainly.
Yeah, and I think one of the key points that I make in the book is when people read about a Mediterranean diet, they may be thinking, oh yeah, I'll get pasta and a ton of oil and a little bit of chorizo, and maybe I'll have and that's what. But in the medical literature, when we do studies regarding a Mediterranean diet, we give your diet points for containing whole grains and fruits and vegetables and legumes, and for not having red meat, and for not having processed meat, and for not having excess saturated fat. And in fact, the Mediterranean diet score was derived from these traditional Mediterranean rural populations living around the Mediterranean, who were eating a predominantly plant-based diet, like in Sardinia and in Corsica, and even villages that were right on the coast but hardly ate any fish, just maybe would eat fish once or twice a week. So when you go into a population, and if you get out your standard research tool, the Mediterranean diet score, and you give everybody in, let's say you go to California, and you give everyone in California a Mediterranean diet score based on what they eat, and then you ask everybody, are you vegan, vegetarian, omnivore, paleo, etc.? Vegans are 30 times more likely to be hitting the grade for a healthy Mediterranean diet. A whole food plant-based diet is the healthiest version of the classic Mediterranean diet. So that's why in the book I pose the question, plant-based or Mediterranean? By eating a whole food plant-based diet, you are eating the healthiest version of a Mediterranean diet.
It's fantastic. So we're going to take some questions in a minute, because I can see there's a lot of questions. So I'm just going to, if I may, Dr. Desmond, I'm going to just bring you a couple of questions from the community. But I have a question for you that I just wanted to start off with, which is, you know, a lot of women that I work with have IBS. IBS seems to be extremely common. And a lot of the advice that they're given is to eat by their gastroenterologist or endocrinologist or doctor or whatever, is just eat almost the sort of keto kind of thing. You just need a lot of protein. They get told you need protein because your gut isn't digesting properly. So you've got to eat eggs. You need to eat lean, the usual, the lean meats and whatever else. So I know a lot of people who are watching are going to relate to having IBS or IBD and being told that. And then you've got the whole kind of keto paleo community kind of underscoring that. Could you speak to that a little, please?
Well, it's not surprising that you meet so many people who have irritable bowel syndrome. This is a condition that affects about 45 to 50 million Americans, okay? So it's incredibly prevalent. So when we talk about IBS, we have what you might call unexplained diarrhea, unexplained constipation, unexplained bloating, unexplained digestive health problems. It can be incredibly frustrating for a patient because they see a doctor who does some blood work and does a colonoscopy, tells them everything's healthy, go home, you're fine. And that person can be at home and their quality of life can be absolutely dreadful. It's so common for me to meet patients, and I tell the story of a patient like this in my book very early on in this section, Healthy Gut. That's Emma. So this is a young woman. She's in her 30s. She already has a long list of medical diagnoses. She's got IBS. She's got endometriosis. She's living with obesity. She's got type 2 diabetes. Okay. She's had multiple scans, scopes, blood tests. She's been admitted to the emergency department with abdominal pain on numerous occasions. She's even had a diagnostic laparoscopy, so exploratory surgery to look inside her belly to find out what the problem is. Okay, she comes to see me. We go through all her previous investigations. Nobody, Sophie, had asked her about food. This had been going on for years.
Wow.
Type 2 diabetes, living with obesity,
Unbelievable.
endometriosis, irritable bowel syndrome. So I start with my patients asking very simple questions. Do you eat fruit? Do you eat whole grains? Do you eat vegetables? How many servings of each? Do you have a lot of dairy? Do you have a lot of processed food? Do you have a lot of junk food? Do you have a lot of processed meat? Do you eat sausage? Do you eat bacon? And we just identify simple things, okay? It turns out, of course, that this young woman doesn't eat fruit because she's got pre-diabetes and somebody told her that fruit would spike her blood sugars or make her diabetes worse, which is absolutely incorrect.
Yeah.
If you have, the American guidelines for patients with pre-diabetes is to get them on a plant-based diet, reverse their insulin resistance, help them to lose weight. Okay, she's been given the wrong information on that. Mm-hmm. She tends to avoid carbohydrates because carbohydrates make you fat, right? And she's already living with overweight and she doesn't want to get more overweight. Of course, that's also terrible information because whole carbohydrates help you to maintain a healthy body weight. And so she doesn't eat any whole grains. She doesn't eat any quinoa or rice or whole grain breads, for example. Okay, she has a lot of dairy. She has a lot of meat. So we agree some simple plant-based changes. We ask her to actively correct her fiber deficiency for about 6 weeks. And it's simple stuff. It's oats for breakfast. It's dropping dairy. It's switching to a plant-based milk, okay? These are baby steps, okay? So she comes back for her 6-week checkup with me. I've sent her off for one more test. Test comes back clear. And she comes back to me and her quality of life has been transformed because she has come off this kind of low-carb standard Western diet. She's now feeding her gut and her gut microbes the foods that they thrive upon. Her abdominal pain and severe IBS has resolved. She's lost a little bit of weight, which is a good thing for her because she was living with overweight. Her blood sugars are far easier to control. She's been able to reduce her diabetes medication. And this is huge, right? This is remarkable for a young woman who's been living with debilitating IBS symptoms for years. So in many ways, you said earlier about the fact that patients in the US who are in your community have been diagnosed with IBS and they've been told, well, just eat protein, just eat eggs, just eat meat. People in the US eat more meat and eggs and protein than anyone in the world. Okay, 100 kilos of meat per person per year on average. Even people in the US who don't eat much meat are still eating more meat than most people in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. And then a doctor tells them to eat even more. So you're already eating more meat than anybody in the world, and you've got terrible gut health problems. I need you to eat more meat. It doesn't make sense. Now, potentially, if you are living with fiber deficiency and you are constipated and bloated and uncomfortable, you are now in a situation where your fiber deficient gut has landed you in a very difficult situation. And if you've been eating a standard American diet and you wake up day one and you say, right, time for a change. I'm having beans for breakfast. I'm having a kale smoothie for lunch. And I'm going to make a beautiful quinoa salad later. And I'm going to have another kale smoothie. Then that's a big change for you. That is a huge change. And what you're going to find is that your constipated gut, your gut microbes are going to get a bit of a shock. They're going to be trying to metabolize all of these healthy fermentable foods really, really quickly. And you're going to experience bloating and gas and distension. That doesn't mean that those foods are bad for you right now. It just means that you need to take things a little bit slower. And if you'd like, I could go through maybe some tips for people who are living with digestive health problems and want to make that transition to a plant-based diet.
Absolutely. You know, what I would love to do is I would love to, Miss Sunrise said she can't wait to get the book. I'd love to ask you a few questions because there has been a few and I don't want to leave these. So
yeah, sure.
I'm only on day 17 of Whole Food Plant-Based. I love it. That's interesting. She said, I want, how long will it take for me to see changes? And she says that, oh, wait a minute, is it going so quickly? Well, how long will it take for her to see changes? Because she's coming off a medication. Because I want to get off famotidine. Have I said that right?
Famotidine, which I think is which may be prescribed as an anti-reflux medication.
Right. Yes. So how long before she'll be able to come off of that is what I guess.
Look, within the book, I'm very clear that although I've used the word diet in the title of the book, in the first couple of pages, it says diet, the food that a person or an animal eats every day. So it's not like a quick fix plan. It's not like a 6-week thing. I don't want people just to go plant-based for 6 weeks and go, right, I did the reset and I'm going to go back to where I was. I want people to take this on as a lifestyle. A long-term plan, okay? So the good news is that you will begin to experience benefits within days, okay? You will experience benefits within days. And why will you experience benefits within days? Because within days, your blood pressure can improve. Your cholesterol can start to improve. Your gut microbes begin to change very dramatically within days when you maximize the diversity of plants in your diet. Multiple studies tell us that in those first 28 days, you can kickstart healthy weight loss, lower cholesterol, improve diabetic control, reduce intestinal inflammation, generate beneficial shifts in the gut microbiome, and reduce your risk of GI cancer during those first 28 days. But the even better news, Sophie, is that the benefits never stop coming. The longer you are plant-based, the better. And those benefits never stop coming. I'm so pleased to hear from your viewer there that they're 17 days in. You know, in 17 years, they will be looking back and wishing that they'd made this change years earlier.
Yeah, you really will. And for me, it's been about a decade now. And I absolutely, I mean, you know, most of my community know, but it's the gift that keeps on giving. And every day, I mean, I'm going to be turning 57 in this month, actually. And I feel I have more energy, Dr. Desmond, and I feel younger, stronger, brighter, clearer than I did 20 years ago. And that's because I eat completely, exclusively this way.
And a lot of that is due to the happiness effect, right? We speak that in the book. There's plenty of science showing why a plant-strong diet can also help to improve your energy and mood, etc. So it never stops, right? It never stops.
Right, so we've got a question here from Terry. What are your thoughts on leaky gut and SIBO or SIBO?
SIBO. So a healthy gut is supposed to be a little bit leaky. It has to be. Your intestine is an incredibly complex system. If you think about it, we eat food. It contains nutrients. We talk about these things as nutrients, carbohydrates, protein, fats. We talk about micronutrients like zinc and iron, and you know, we talk omega-3s. So we talk about these like they are food and nutrients, which I get, but really it's the stuff that humans are made out of, okay? And every process in our bodies depends on these substances. So this is the stuff we're built out of. This is why we need to consume it. It also provides us the energy for all the metabolic processes that happen in our body. Now, we need to get that stuff into our bloodstream and into our body so we can use it, and we absorb it through our intestine. We consume food, we begin to break it down as soon as we chew it. Digestive enzymes continue the process, and most of the absorption occurs within the small intestine. So the small intestine needs to be leaky, a little bit leaky, because it's got to absorb these nutrients. It's normal. It's a normal thing. When we talk about leaky gut as a problem, then we do know that in certain illnesses like celiac disease and Crohn's disease, but also we can detect this in individuals with metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, overweight, atherosclerosis. There is a baseline of abnormal gut inflammation and increased gut permeability, which means that the gut is a little bit too leaky. And what happens when the gut is a little bit too leaky? Well, then different things can get into your bloodstream and get exposed to your immune system, which shouldn't really be there. So these things would include certain bacteria, which can trigger conditions like inflammatory bowel disease or Crohn's disease, such as adherent invasive E. coli, which is a bad player. You can tell by the name, adherent invasive. Okay, you don't want that getting into your system. Also things like lipopolysaccharides, which are kind of breakdown products from bacteria, which shouldn't be in your bloodstream. They get into your bloodstream, they run through your system, they're pro-inflammatory, they contribute to atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease, etc. So that's how I view leaky gut. And I would think that in countries where we consume a standard Western diet, where we've got a lot of pro-inflammatory bacteria, a lot of pro-inflammatory heme iron, we've got a lot of TMAO production going on in our gut microbiome and our liver, and also where we've got a lot of highly processed foods and junk foods with emulsifiers and maltodextrin and all these chemicals that have no business whatsoever in the human digestive tract. They make our gut permanently a little bit leaky, which is almost like a pro-inflammatory state. But leaky gut isn't, to my mind, a disease process in and of itself. It's a sign of an underlying health condition, or it's a sign of an unhealthy diet which is promoting gut inflammation. So saying someone has got a leaky gut is almost like saying they've got a temperature or a fever. It's telling you that something is wrong. You need to go and look for a disease process, and you also need to actively help this person to move their diet in a healthier direction.
Oh, that is just, what a great explanation. Thank you. I've never heard it put like that about leaky gut, because I think that word is bandied around. And as you say, many think, oh, it sounds so terrible. It sounds like this diagnosis, but there is an underlying situation going on there. What about I can never say it
SIBO.
right.
SIBO. So small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So yeah. in the book, I talk a lot about the gut microbes, okay, the human gut microbiome. We have got hundreds of trillions of microbes which live in our gut. They contribute very much to our metabolism, help us control our appetite, our body weight, our blood sugars. They help us reduce systemic inflammation. They provide sustenance for the cells that line our gut, which is incredible. They produce short-chain fatty acids, which help protect our neurological health. It's incredible. There's such an integral part of our body that the human gut microbes have been described as a control center for human biology. Incredible, right? But they mostly reside in our colon, our large bowel, which is their natural home. They have plenty of space in there, plenty of room. They're in the right environment. They can ferment food products and fiber to produce short-chain fatty acids, but also to produce gas and liquid. And our colon is built to deal with all this. Okay, it's all going to end up in the toilet bowl eventually, and we can deal with it. But what we do see is in certain patients, the small intestine, which also has a microbiome, but has far fewer microbes. It's not sterile, but it's more sterile, begins to take on more bacteria. More bacteria start to grow in there, and they start to produce gas and liquid. And the small intestine isn't geared up for that. It's not supposed to be happening in the small intestine. And that can lead to inflammation and bloating and leaky gut, which we just talked about a few moments ago. So what do we do about that? Well, we first of all look for an underlying health condition like Crohn's disease or colitis or a bowel stricture. If someone has constipation due to fiber deficiency, we actively correct that constipation. Sometimes we'll use certain antibiotics to reduce the unhelpful bacteria. That's always a temporary fix. It always comes with healthy dietary advice. So small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is a real phenomenon. In my opinion, it should always be diagnosed in conjunction with an experienced gastroenterologist. You can buy an online test and do it at home and send it off, and you'll get a report from a lab somewhere saying, yep, you've tested up for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. But really, in my opinion, that test needs to be interpreted in the right clinical context. Like any lab test, a full blood count or, a measurement of inflammation in your body needs to be interpreted in the right clinical context.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. All right, here's another question. Being diagnosed with 2 hernias, I have acid reflux. I've been having chronic constipation and bloating. I wake up every morning with an achy stomach. Could this program heal all of that?
So list the problems there again, sorry, because I can't quite read it.
Okay, oh, you can't see it. Sorry, I'm assuming you can see this on the thing. So this is Pam. She's been diagnosed with 2 hernias.
Yep.
Pam, I'm assuming that's probably a hiatal hernia, but and I have acid reflux.
Yep.
She's been having chronic constipation and bloating, and wakes up with her bellyache every morning.
Absolutely. A healthier approach to food, a healthier, higher fiber, lower fat approach to food has an awful lot to offer here, actually. So it's certainly worth trying. One thing I would say is if you've been suffering with dreadful constipation, as I said earlier, is that you may wish to make this switch gradually. I mean, if you were eating a standard American, 12 to 18 grams of fiber per day, and now you're going to make the switch to 55 to 70 grams of fiber per day, then that's going to be a big change. We covered that earlier. You may wish to make the change gradually. In the book, we have the 28-day revolution plan, but in the introduction to that, preparing for the revolution, I discuss very clearly that if most of your meals don't look anything like the meals in this book, then I want you to start slowly and give yourself 2 or 3 weeks. Start off with breakfasts, then move on to lunch, then move on to your dinner. And then when maybe half of your meals look like the food in this book, you're ready to jump right in and go 100%.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm just going to keep going through a couple of more of these questions. So this is Tammy. She's been struggling with digestion issues last 4 years. She was diagnosed with SIBO, IBS, and insulin resistance. She's tried paleo, keto, etc. It hasn't got better. I had a colonoscopy, this is her speaking, Tammy, on Saturday, which was efficient, and I was efficiently diagnosed with gastritis. I have been terrified to try plant-based because I heard the carbs would make it worse. Dr. Desmond, over to you.
A lot of GI issues mentioned there, okay? And I'm glad that you are seeing a team and that you have your own medical doctors and they're taking care of you. And that's really, really important. When it comes to the food aspect of things, the most important thing to my mind that has just been mentioned here is a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, okay? Because of all the conditions that have just been mentioned here, that is the most significant. This is the condition that can reduce one's life expectancy, that can lead to requirement for insulin, can lead to visual problems in severe cases, lead to dialysis, etc. Now, we know that a healthy plant-based diet prevents type 2 diabetes. So among the Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, California, who eat very little meat indeed, among the Adventists who eat very little meat, very few get type 2 diabetes. Even among that population, those who don't eat any meat at all, they're all on plants, are extremely unlikely to develop type 2 diabetes, okay? And the dietary guidelines officially in the US right now for people with pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes state, and I quote, all patients should strive to attain and maintain an optimal weight through a primarily plant-based meal plan. And by making the switch to that approach to food, you will reverse the insulin resistance that is driving your type 2 diabetes, and you will significantly reduce your personal risk of going on to developing type 2 diabetes. And this is something that I see in my clinic all the time. I mentioned a few moments ago about the young woman who found that her type 2 diabetes was easier to control. I recently had a patient who had been having a flare of ulcerative colitis in pregnancy 2 years ago. During that pregnancy, she had she had the diabetes of pregnancy, gestational diabetes. She made the switch to a whole food plant-based diet. Her ulcerative colitis got so much better. And 18 months later, she's going through another pregnancy. Her colitis doesn't flare, but most importantly for me, she does not develop gestational diabetes during her second pregnancy. So, and I cover this in detail in the book. So, healthy body, a body that does not live with insulin resistance. Yes, a healthy whole food plant-based diet has got so much to offer you, and that statement is not controversial. There is a lot of people out there who advocate a low carb, high protein diet for diabetes. And yes, if you don't eat any carbohydrates, you will keep your blood sugars low artificially. Okay, you'll keep it low artificially. No doctor should ever tell a patient not to eat an apple. And if you were being a really good keto person, you don't eat any apples. Okay, it's a disaster. We have seen the studies showing that ketogenic diet, high fat ketogenic diet worsens the underlying condition. It just hides it. It worsens it. And worse than that, Sophie, it takes years off your life expectancy. If I can just slight segue, paper published yesterday, hot off the press. This is so relevant, okay? Among doctors working during the COVID-19 pandemic peak in 2020, those doctors who were working treating patients with COVID-19, among those doctors, the vegan doctors, the whole food plant-based doctors, were 73% less likely to get severe COVID. The doctors who were eating a low carb, high protein diet were 3 times more likely to get severe COVID. So the benefits of this approach to food just keep on coming. That's a long answer, but I hope it's been helpful.
It's a brilliant answer, and I definitely want details of that. What an incredible report. You know, it's interesting. There's here in Los Angeles, there's obviously a lot of health food stores, and it's the sort of mecca of, obviously here in LA, of the kind of healthy thing. And there's one particular health food store. There's a chain of them here in LA, and the healthiest people sort of cruise around these stores. And over the last 3 or 4 years, to my dismay and horror, I see aisle upon aisle of grain-free, paleo, keto. There's grain-free bread, grain-free crackers, grain-free. It's almost as if even in this supposedly healthy community, grains have become the devil incarnate. And so I would like, I mean, look, we're almost out of time, and we're going to have you back, Dr.
Well,
Desmond.
number one, the science tells us that daily consumption of whole grains, okay, daily consumption of healthy whole grains, oats, whole grain bread, quinoa, freekeh, you name it, okay, sorghum, whatever, free healthy whole grains, reduces your risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, colorectal cancer, infectious diseases, pneumonia, now COVID-19 severity better in people who eat a lot of whole grains. So this whole concept is completely counter-scientific. We saw a paper published out of Harvard back in 2018, okay? 15,000 adults in the United States followed for 25 years, okay? A low carbohydrate dietary pattern favoring animal-derived protein and fat, so beef and chicken and all that sort of thing, this low carb thing. These people were far more likely to die during the 25-year follow-up, okay? And a 50-year-old person who is adhering to a low carb, high animal protein diet is on average taking 4 years off their life expectancy. So yes, you can lose weight, okay? You can also, you'll lose just as much weight on a whole food plant-based diet if that's your goal. Okay, you can lose weight either way, but you're going to have a longer and happier and healthier life if you choose the plant-directed route.
Absolutely. So, ladies and gents, we are almost out of time tonight. And Dr. Desmond, we would love to have you back. I'm going to twist your arm to have you back. We haven't even got to all of the brilliant questions. But I just want to say one more time to everybody, and if you've just hopped on, honestly, do yourself a favor, do your friends and family a favor. get this book for them. You know, we've got Father's Day coming up, brilliant Father's Day gift for your dad, for your, you know, for anybody, any male in your life who's a father. Get them this, because it's always like, oh, what should I get them? Because the thing that I love most about this book is not only is it full of all the information that Dr. Desmond, or a lot of those great stories that he's actually gone over in this interview, they're actually in this book. Case study, you know, patients that he's worked with. There's a ton of really, really important information about diabetes, about blood pressure, about microbiome brain connection, stopping heart disease in its tracks, etc. So there's all this information before you even get to the recipes. And then you get 80 simple, gorgeous, not complicated. So if you're just learning to cook this way, they're incredibly simple. They are absolutely beautifully photographed recipes. And I want to give you one example, and I hope I can find this quickly, because it's just, here we go. I love this. So there's one double page spread. This is just one example of how amazing this book is. So it's one double page spread right here, right? And it is called, I'm not doing it very well here, but it's called Beyond Hummus. All right. And it's these beautiful pictures of, you get your basic hummus recipe. And then there is 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 3 completely different ways that you can make it. I'm just going to give you an example here. Tex-Mex, herby white bean hummus, mushroom and walnut hummus. I'm so trying that this week, by the way, because I never thought of putting mushrooms, which I love,
so
one
good.
of my favorite foods, in hummus. And the pictures are absolutely beautiful. And there's, honestly, you're just going to learn so much from this book.
And also, Sophie, you'll have noted that every single recipe, because we didn't talk about this tonight, maybe we'll talk about this next time, protein. Where do you get your protein? Get your protein from plants, people. It's the healthiest place to get it. Every single recipe in the book tells you exactly how much protein you're getting per serving. People will be shocked when they see how much protein is in these completely plant-based meals. And the meal plan contains 70 grams of healthy plant-based protein per day. You can get more protein if you like by eating more food.
And that's amazing, because given the fact that I think it's women is like 49 grams of protein a day, right? Was sort of recommended, and men is 56. And now if you follow the recipes in this book, or you follow a day of recipes in this book, you're getting double that. And it's the old chestnut of people going, I need my protein. So anyway, absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry for those of you that we couldn't get to the questions. There's just so much to talk about and to unpack here. But really, I think we've got the message loudly and clearly today that if you want to heal your gut, your digestive system, the way to do it is to go whole food, plant-based. And if you want the most incredible recipes and inspiration to help you go that way, grab yourself a copy of the Plant-Based Diet Revolution by Dr. Alan Desmond, who is a gastroenterologist. So this is like, this is, really the solid information of somebody who works and helps to heal patients. So thank you. Everybody's going, thank you, thank you, thank you. Feeling hopeful, thank you.
Wow.
I'd love a cookbook. Yes, please, thank you, thank you. Ordered the book. Patricia's ordered the book.
Thank you.
Kathy, thank you, Dr. Desmond. Come back, please. Very informative. So the community has spoken. We'd love to have you back.
Sophie, thanks, Rich. Let's get in the diary. Why don't we do protein the next time? Where do you get your protein? We'll do that. That would be fun. All
right. So we'll get you back. I'll contact you in 30 days time. We'll have you back and we'll talk about plant-based protein. I think that's a fantastic comment. And Cheryl says, wonderful interview. Cheryl's worked with me. She is completely whole food, plant-based. She lost tons and tons of weight. She's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful, strong, and better than she's ever been in her life. So the plants definitely work. So thank you. We'll get you back on the diary, as we say in England. I love that. And we look forward to it. And thank you. I really, really want to thank you for spending an hour of your precious evening, because I know it's almost 9 o'clock in the UK right now. So thank you. And we can't wait to have you back.
No, it's really kind. This revolution is on. And I mean, you've been preaching this for a long time now. And I'm really glad that you've enjoyed the book so much. I mean, coming from someone who's got a ton of plant-based cookbooks, your comments on the book are really gratefully received. So thank you. And thank you for spending an hour with me. I really appreciate it.
All right, then. Thank you. And we look forward to having you back. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Grab your copy of the book right now, hot off the press. It's only been a month in the US, so you want to be one of the first to get it. Gorgeous, hard copy. Great, great gift for everybody you love. Bye-bye. Bye.